In this video, we're going to be changing the oil and filter on my 2001 BMW 325i. Okay, the tools we're going to need for this are a Phillips and flathead screwdriver, a ratchet, a 17mm socket, and a 36mm socket for the oil filter cap. If you don't have a 36mm socket, you can also use an adjustable wrench or a C-clamp. We'll also be using a low profile racing jack and jack stands to support the car. Step is going to be to remove the engine splash shield, and that's going to be 6 Phillips head screws, 3 on each side as shown in the clip here. And once you get those off, we can go ahead and jack up the car. There's a circular jacking point in the middle of the front subframe, and that's where I've jacked up the car from many times. It's always worked well for me. So go ahead and lift up the car until you can get the jack stands underneath the jack pads. Just like shown there in the video. And then we can go ahead and lower the jack so that the entire weight of the front of the car is sitting on those jack stands. Okay, now once you break loose your oil drain bolt, we can go ahead and loosen it more with just the socket. And before you completely remove the bolt, I always like to remove the oil filler cap, because that's going to give us a much smoother flow of oil coming out from the bottom of the engine, and that'll help prevent us from making a big mess and getting oil everywhere. Also, if you're not doing the filter, make sure you save your crush washer if you're going to be reusing that. But most of the time the filters with these cars come with a new crush washer, so I'm not going to worry about that. And go ahead and let that oil drain out. I usually let it drain for quite a while. And now we can go ahead and clean up our oil drain bolt and put that new crush washer on there. So now we can go ahead and wipe down the threads and the surface where that bolt's going to go. Get it cleaned up a little bit. And start threading in the oil drain bolt with your fingers, just by hand at first, and then it'll start giving you some resistance, and that's when I like to just use the socket to kind of drive it in from there until it needs to be torqued down. And you don't have to use a torque wrench for this. The specs are 24 foot-pounds, I believe, somewhere in that range of 24 to 28. But just go ahead and give it a little bit of tightness, but you don't want to over tighten the drain bolt, because then you can strip out the threads. Alright, now we can go ahead and get the old oil out from underneath the car by dragging it with paper sacks underneath the oil pan. It's a really cool method to get it out of there without making a mess and spilling it everywhere. And now onto the oil filter. So I'm going to go ahead and break that loose with a counterclockwise motion with my 36mm socket. And just keep unscrewing that there to loosen it. Like I mentioned before, if you don't have the 36mm socket, you can use an adjustable wrench and kind of grip the nut and then break it loose like this here. Or use the C-clamp. Alright, so go ahead and get that old oil filter out of there and into a plastic sack so we don't drip oil everywhere. And the old filter just pops right off. Then there's going to be a little notch where you can fit your flathead screwdriver underneath the O-ring and sort of pry it off with a circular motion. And that just comes right off. Then I like to give the new O-ring a little coat of oil. Helps it seal and slip onto the plastic cap a little bit easier. Alright, then once you have that done, you're ready to pop on the new filter. Push it on there and it'll make a little snap sound just like this. Now we're good to go ahead and screw that new oil filter back into the housing. And make sure you have your threads lined up and nothing's cross-threaded or anything funny like that. It's just plastic, so you don't want to damage it or over tighten it. Once you see the black plastic on the cap meet the silver mounting surface below it, just tighten it a little bit more and it should be nice and snug. Now let's go ahead and add our oil. You're going to need a little bit more than the 5 quarts that come in the big jug because the capacity is 7 quarts. And if you have a 330i, it might even be a little bit more. But just go ahead and buy a couple extra quarts and make sure your dipstick is at the full level when you check it after filling. Alright, once you fill her up with oil, we can go ahead and check our level with the dipstick here. And we're looking good. Now you have to account for a little bit of oil getting circulated into the filter when you first start it up. So we'll probably need to add about another half quart to this. But we can go ahead and fire her up now. Alright, now let's go ahead and start her up and make sure that our oil light up here comes on and then goes off after just a couple seconds. Looks good.